Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 13. It is the season finale, and it is called That Hope Is You Part 2, which I'll address first of all, because I get very confused at the start of this season, because Episode 1 was called That Hope Is You Part 1, and then I got confused in week 2 when it wasn't a Part 2, and I was like, this is really strange. I'm sure the first one said Part 1.
Yeah, we thought they changed the episode title.
So It turns out there was a plan in place, and it does make some amount of sense. I see what they've done here, bookending with a part 1 and part 2, but I just wish there was a way to know that that's what they were going to do back at the start.
It's a weird choice still.
I feel like I've seen it at least once before, because this didn't shock me, and I was like, oh, they've done this thing.
I feel like instead of part 1 and part 2, they should be like Alpha and Omega.
Sure. But yeah, so Connor's back on Discovery after like 6 episodes or something, absence.
Yeah, I caught up. I'm here.
Yes. And I this is such
I have
a
no
weird...
idea what you felt about the rest of the season, by the way. I've not watched.
That's funny. Yeah, that's funny how you don't know how I was. I guess generally speaking, the Mirror two-parter was mostly pretty good. Nice tie back to the original series.
Okay.
Mostly, it wasn't perfect. There was issues.
Just briefly while I'm here, I liked those episodes for what they were, but I also felt like it really distracted from the pacing of the season.
I think that's fair, but at least you know how what's her face is back for the spin-off now.
Yeah,
because that's set her back. Which, to be honest, was a better solution though to that problem than anything that we guessed might happen. Because I hated all the things we guessed, so it was like, yeah, okay,
right. I don't think I liked them tying it to the Guardian so much.
No,
okay. I felt a little bit fan servicey. I guess it felt a little bit cheap.
I was okay with that, but let's not dwell on the past episodes too much, because the finale. So here's the thing: I've not been in love with the Admiral stuff or the Federation stuff. Last episode though, they presented me with a very intriguing idea. This intriguing idea that Asira was going to try and basically have the Chain and the Federation form the new Federation, and was willing to basically slowly transition the Chain into giving up all of their criminal ways. It was going to take a lot of time, because if you try and take all the stuff away from all these rich assholes, they're going to rebel. It has to take time. It has to be a slow transition.
That's a reasonable request, I think.
And the only sticking point for her towards the end of the episode was when the Admiral said, yeah, but you can't be still in control. You have to kind of be brought to justice for what you've done. And I said this in the last review, I said, I will give them so much credit, because the by far the most interesting thing they could do to end this season is have her, after some deliberation and maybe some struggling with it, have her make the right choice and have her say, you know what, this future is worth me giving this up, and have this newfound Federation start off with someone who has been typically a kind of an asshole and evil up until this point, making a noble gesture that would start off in almost like a really nice symbolic way of like, okay, we can improve, we can get better. So she's giving this up. She doesn't even consider it. She's just back to shooting people and being evil this episode. I was so disappointed.
Worse. Yeah, no, this is. She felt particularly one-note villain this episode.
Yeah, she wouldn't have. See if she I wouldn't have liked it as much, but if she'd at least like struggled and considered it and then decided not to for whatever reason, and I'm like, okay, at least it was like a point in her head. But it turns out she'd made a decision last episode and there was never coming back from it. When she stormed out of that room, that was her. She was done. And there was never coming back. I was so disappointed in this episode because of that.
No, I agree. That is really disappointing, because I think she's been fine this season. Like, she's not been anything special, but she's not been bad. Yeah, pretty one note, but that that moment was the most interesting stuff that she's had by a long shot.
Honestly, her like getting into that room and saying why she was there and saying she wants to do this was by far the most interesting concept this show has presented me with since the first few episodes. I was like, oh, this is actually really good. This is a great idea to build like a future of the show on. So I was really disappointed in her being a villain. So a lot of the episode is just action. There's a lot of there's this fights just outside the turbo lift. The inside of the ship outside the turbo lift looks like infinite like machinery and lights and stuff. It's like over the top a little bit.
Yeah, is that the first time we've seen that?
I mean, I don't know if it's the first time we've seen it in the show. It's been a while if we have, but they had a lot of dangling and almost falling off. And the one guy, obviously the bad guy from back in the episode like 2, the one that was on the planet. That was 3 because the one Tilly had the interactions with. He ends up falling off and dying. But
do you know what it reminds me of? Like the way their turbo lift works.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. You know, the glass elevator. That just kind of goes wherever it wants. Visually, that's what this looked like to me.
Was it not Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory?
I don't know. I thought it was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
I thought there was a confusion. It doesn't really matter, right? It's the same thing.
It's a relevant point. Everyone knew what I meant, clearly.
Yeah. But anyway, so here's something just from a larger scale that I want to talk about this finale, right? This show overall is that this is the 3rd season finale in a row, which effectively changes the status quo to the point where it feels like next season is going to be a completely fresh start. And after season 1 and 2, that was kind of welcomed because both seasons, like, it was like, oh, we kind of want a better show. So I'm glad they're resetting this. And while, don't get me wrong, season 3 has not been like even great. I'd say it's had some good moments, had some bad moments. It's been kind of mixed, which ultimately sums up the show overall. Is it's very, very mixed.
I think this season's maybe the most frustrating in that it had the most promise.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's fair. I actually, despite all my disappointments, I think it might be the best finale just because it didn't. Even though I was really disappointed in what they did with Syra, because I thought they had a really great potential in what they could have just done with her, but it wasn't as like all the angel stuff from season 2, the Klingon stuff from season 1.
Wrong.
Yeah.
And I will say, because obviously I wasn't here, very glad that the burn wasn't anything to do with their time travel shenanigans after all. I'm happy to have been wrong about that one.
As was I. I didn't like some of the visuals of like the weird like holodeck thing that we're on.
Sure.
It felt a bit too magical to me, like all these portals opening up and shit. But other than that was more of a visual qualm. And I've never really liked the visual style of this show that much anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But but this is the 3rd time that we've ended a season like this. It's also going to be the 4th season. Season 4 will be the 4th season with a new captain because every season's had its own captain.
Yeah,
we've never had a captain longer than 1 season, and that feels a shame because 1, it would have been great to feel some stability. It feels like this show has no stability because it just changes every year, and on top of that, Saru, because he was someone who was there before, who built up to being captain, it felt like he was a nice natural fit to be captain then and stay in that role. It just shifting to Michael here at the end of season 3.
I suspect, this isn't really going to make you feel that much better, but I suspect we are going to stay with Michael as the captain now for the rest of the show. It feels like this has been what it's wanted to get to for the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's potentially true. We do have new uniforms at the end, and they've brought the color coding back. I noticed that she's got.
I feel like they need to grow on me. I'm not sure I like the uniforms.
I like them well enough. I think I was always a fan of the muted colors from the motion picture. So this having, but this having also the stripe of the color. So the red, and it's following Next Gen rules from what I could tell, because Michael's got the red because she's captain, and then some have blue and gold.
It's not to say like I dislike these costumes or outfits. They're fine. They need to grow on me. I think I just got used to the sleek uniforms that they've been wearing on this show, and I do actually quite like the design of the uniforms that they had.
They're all right. I kind of do like the color coding though, so it's nice for them to have that back in some capacity.
I agree with that.
So yeah, once again we've ended with a new captain, and while obviously it was kind of inevitable that Michael at some point was going to take command. It's kind of weird that even Tilly got a shot first.
I think what's weirder about this to me is I feel like if you wanted Michael to take command, which I get why they wanted that, I get that was their game. I feel like you should have had Saru die.
That's actually
in the burn, in that other place.
That's actually something that me and Tara both thought may happen. We we felt like it was maybe leading up to Saru death.
I thought it was plausible that it could. I was definitely feeling that as I was watching it, and I feel like if he was going to come back and survive, that's a fine choice if they wanted to do that. But I feel like he should have just stayed captain. I feel like if they wanted Michael to take over, you should have had Saru die and have her take over in that circumstance.
Yeah. Because it kind of comes about in this weird way, where Saru wants her to take the role, and the Admiral agrees,
I think I don't really buy that. Just a handful of episodes ago, we were at the point where you can't even be trusted to be the first officer anymore. Yeah, and now it's like, I want you to be captain. I don't feel like we got to that stage.
It feels forced. It feels like it's happened too quickly because of where we were halfway through this season.
Whereas if he had died and it was like, we need you to step up, I'd have kind of been on board with that.
Yeah, okay, that could be in a crisis, it'd be like stepping up, and then when she does okay in the crisis, like, well, there's no one else that knows the ship very well, so you might as well take the role for now. So another thing they sort of did this episode is that Book, because of his natural sort of empath connections, actually can control the jump drive. He can
control the spores, and I'm okay with this actually.
Yeah, I'm okay with this too.
That's something that was set up pretty early with Book.
This also feels like it lets Stamets maybe do something else occasionally, but it also means that he has a very specific purpose on the ship now that feels very useful.
I do like, because I think this has probably been one of Stamets' strongest seasons. I think, giving him and Hugh the parental role with Adira and Gray has been really nice.
I don't know if I'm going to agree with that.
I agree that it's probably jumped into it too quickly.
Last episode, when he started talking about Adira as his child, I was laughing because, wait, he's not what?
No. I like all of the actual content. I agree that it shouldn't have been vocalized just yet, but I like all of the actual ideas of it.
Even in this finale, Culber on the other end started sort of acting that way. When Adira showed up and could see Gray and like, we're going to make sure Gray can come back properly somehow. I suspect Gray's going to end up being Rimmer from Red Dwarf. They're going to give Gray a hologram. I suspect that's what's going to.
If that holodeck can recognize him, why can't one of ours?
Exactly. Yeah. And we're keeping a sort of little Wall-E-esque robot that the computer's in, who saved the
Sphere Data specifically.
The Sphere Data, yeah, saved Owo. Which was all that stuff was fine. Them trying to survive as the atmosphere, because like all the
they blast out all the oxygen and stuff.
Yeah, all the life support's turned off, so they're slowly dying. And they set up that Owo, because of her upbringing, she trained to like hold her breath for longer and stuff. So she has a bit of a better stamina for this kind of thing. Yeah, and even she's obviously still dying eventually because she's like almost at the thing, and it's the robot that saves her life. Because basically they blow up part of the engine off so that the ship will slow down so that the others can catch up and whatnot. So yeah, and there's action because they're actually inside. The Discovery's inside the bigger like villain ship, so that's kind of a point because they actually warp from inside it and it blows up the ship they're inside of, which was a neat visual. Which is
it was that was kind of fun.
So that's there. Although statements we have to mention. I was actually a little bit confused by this because I thought the scene last episode where Michael jettisons him out and he's like screaming, "We came to the future for you, don't do this to me, don't do this to me," was relatively powerful. I did critique that, okay, this is maybe the most justified choice Michael's ever made, which is good, although you could still critique it with the idea that, well, if it's someone she cares about, she wouldn't be making this choice. She's very good at making this.
She's a bit hypocritical, yeah. But maybe she's grown. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe this is finally her accepting that the greater good.
But there's a moment because they've saved everyone who was with her, because obviously all the corrupted holodeck stuff all gets turned off because the Kelpian kind of lives up and faces his fear and blah blah blah. Yeah. But when they're all back on the ship and Michael's like happy that they're all reunited, Stamets sort of gives her this look that's a bit like, oh, I'm still not quite forgiving you for what you just, even though you've kind of saved the day and everything's okay now. But then at the end, when she's been introduced as captain, they're all lined up. Stamets is smiling at her, and I'm like, "Oh, is he okay with it? Okay with her now? There's no weirdness anymore. Okay, it's just gone."
They'll probably still have some awkward moments next season because they probably just want to brush over it for this moment at the end, and we'll get back to it, which is not the best choice, but I mean,
Science Dude seems to be sticking around. Cyrus guy who, and this was actually my biggest complaint with last episode, is that he only just now started to see evidence that Osira was a bit evil, even though he's been with her his whole life.
I'm going to defend it slightly in that it feels like he's always been off doing science stuff at the side, and he's just been hearing that, oh, she did this and she did that. He's not seen the methods firsthand of how she's doing things.
It just felt comically rushed to me that he was immediately down her by the end. Yeah. So he's it's helpful for like a brief moment in this episode. So it seems like he might stick around as an extra brain on the ship. Yeah, it's a lot of action, pretty much. Otherwise, there's a lot of sort of standoff moments and
it's actually quite a straightforward episode for the most part, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a longer episode. It was just over an hour, so it was a little bit longer than your typical episode, about 10 minutes maybe.
Not enough that I really felt it though.
No.
Especially as like I say, I think most of the extra stuff was just more action.
Yeah. There's a whole fight between Michael and Osyraa in like the sort of the warp area, the ship or whatever it is. Which it's an okay fight. It kind of stumbles into just being a typical fight scene.
Yeah, there's nothing special about it, but there's nothing wrong with it either.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm okay with the fighting in the finale not having anything special if it nailed the other stuff that I thought had all this potential. But the fact that she is just evil and is trying to run away and like destroy everything immediately, just, I don't know, deflated things. And yeah, don't get me wrong, like they still end the episode with like a montage. The guy with the flag from like episode 1 or 2, one of my favorite parts of the season, by the way, was this guy. I loved his little plot.
That was great.
Him being here with an actual uniform on, and he's properly appointed as a member of the fleet and all that. Great. And they end with a bit of narration saying, "Oh, like some of the planets are starting to reach out to us. We've got dilithium from the planet where the burn started. All great stuff." But I couldn't help but feel that the message of Osyraa bringing the chain over and turning herself in and saying, "No, the future needs to be better. You need to admit that you need trade, that you need to have some sort of economic system. We can combine that with what you've got and create some sort of new future." That would have been way more powerful and meaning to me, and I am so disappointed that the show just shoved her aside like a villain.
It was easily the most interesting idea this show has ever had.
I agree. You know what? I didn't even think about it in that bold terms, but you're right. It is the most interesting and Star Trek idea, the most Star Trek-like concept this show has ever had, and it just threw it away immediately.
Right, and the idea that she, but from what I gather, genuinely believed in this idea. It wasn't like just an off-the-cuff thing that she threw together. It was like, barring her having to take the consequences, she genuinely believed this was the right thing for society.
She had a 50-page agreement thing with terms and conditions.
And flipping over to Starfleet, the Admiral, he was on board with most of this. Like, do you know what? This seems reasonable. It's not perfect. It's not what we had in mind necessarily. It's not our exact society. But we're willing to make compromises as well. We're willing to go, do you know what? We can establish some sort of trade. We can bend some rules and create new agreements because the world has changed and we need to change as well. I liked this idea that, oh no, we are going to update things, we are going to change things, and then just because she's like, well, I'm not taking the fall for the shit I did, I want immunity. It's like, okay, I guess she's just evil villain and just wants to kill and torture, and let's go make Buck feel some pain.
It made her far less interesting this episode.
It took the biggest idea that this show's ever had, including the jump to this future.
Yeah.
And everything they set up. It took the biggest idea of what this wanted to do for the Federation and just threw it away.
Yeah. And I don't think I'll ever forget this decision. I think this will go down as the biggest blunder in this show. I don't care what they do now for the rest of the show, even if it gets the worst episode to episode, because it's maybe the writing tank's worse, maybe everything just starts feeling like shit and it's boring episode to episode. I don't think anything they could ever do will outweigh the potential they threw away in this episode, and because it felt like a genuine Star Trek thing. It felt like ending this conflict with a
diplomatic solution.
A diplomatic solution with characters over a table discussing what's best for both people, what's best for both parties.
And I like that it wasn't perfect. No one was really getting the desired outcome of everything they needed or wanted. Both sides were making pretty serious compromises, if you ask them.
Yeah.
But it was so interesting for like 10 minutes.
So disappointing.
Yeah.
It was almost like they wanted to tease us with here's what you actually think Star Trek should be, because this is what Star Trek was, and then just shot it in the head right in front of your eyes.
Because we need a villain.
Because we want a villain that Michael can go and punch and kick. And the fact that the finale of a Star Trek show is all focused on big budget Hollywood style action. I don't necessarily hate it as a thing that can be in Star Trek, but when that's there instead of the actual genuine idea in science fiction and the progression and the idea that we can improve, and they throw that away for all the action instead, so we can have the mustache twirling villain.
This show has had action in all seasons, especially at the ending of a season.
Yes.
I've never been mad at that for doing. I've never been mad at this show for doing action at the end of a season, because that's modern TV, right?
Yes.
And that's fine. You can bring Star Trek into the future or into the present day and have action at the end of your season. But to do it at the cost of being Star Trek is a lot more frustrating.
Yeah. Because I was more mad at the action, even though it was fine for what it was, because I'm like, don't get me wrong, it's not like they were ever going to have the finale be a sort of almost 12 Angry Men with just the negotiation in a room with a Saira. Even though part of me would have loved the ballsiness of that. Like, this is the finale. This is just a Saira, the Admiral, and maybe a couple of key figures.
Here's the thing. It's so easy. You have Osyraa go along with this plan, right, and go, oh no, this is what we're doing, and her crew mutiny because they're like, we're not going along with this. Then you have Osyraa being the figurehead and signing away, the chain, but you still have this one crew, this one ship doing terrible things and having the action. You can have the best of both worlds just so easily. It's not difficult to see it.
Also, I'm not even sure why they bothered getting David Cronenberg. He's in like one scene in this episode just shouting something next to the Admiral because they realise that the shields have been brought down or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
it made sense earlier in the season where he had a couple of moments, but I don't know why you got him for this episode.
You paid him for this episode. Maybe he's just a fan. He's a Star Trek fan. He wanted to be involved.
That's believable, right?
Yeah, he's maybe he's like, he saw his son's new movie and he's like, you know what? I'm realizing now how disturbed my entire life's work's been, and I've corrupted my son. I'm going to go do some nice Star Trek feel good stuff, just be at a Star Trek show.
No,
So,
I get it. It's the same sort of thing where you get over here where like there are a lot of actors who just like being in Doctor Who because they're at the age of where they grew up with it as well, and they're like, hey, I'm a fan. I want to just be in an episode.
Sure, yes.
I know you don't care, but it happens.
So yeah, I'm at a really weird place when you talk about this finale. And on the one hand, I think it's objectively the best one of the three we've had, because it's not like it's the least dumb and or annoying one from like just a premise point of view, but in some ways it's the most frustrating because it shot away the best concept the show's ever had that it presented in the previous episode. So
I think in a lot of ways I prefer the season 2 finale to this, because even though it's tied up with all the angel shite, it left it at an exciting place where the ideas were, oh, this is a bold direction that they've gone in. They've made the right choice by the end of the episode that I'm happy with. Whereas this here, even though I think the episode is mostly better than that one because we're not tied up and all that stuff, by the end of it, I'm like, we made the wrong choices here overall. And it wasn't a case of season 2, all right, this is the hand we dealt ourselves for the season. This is the way out of it. But we've made the best of it. And we've left ourselves in a good place going forward. This is, we threw away all our good stuff.
And it's worth mentioning the final like 5 minutes with the speech and Michael coming out as captain and everyone with their new uniforms and all that. That could have all been basically left unchanged, even if you did do what we wanted with all the rest of the plot. Like this little montage of saying, okay, this is where we are. The Federation's back. Starfleet's expanding. Because their mission between seasons, and I assume this will mostly be done by the time we start season 4, is that they're going around delivering dilithium and they're delivering supplies to bring everyone back together in the Federation. Makes sense. So presumably in season 4 we're going to have a functioning Starfleet to some extent.
I hope so.
Which is fine. But I just they had such a good idea. They had such a good thing. They presented it, and
it's worse seeing the potential was so close, and it's like it's it's right there. You just need to change a couple of little lines, and you've got it. You've got your future of this show. And instead, we just here we go again.
That's been the season finale of Star Trek Discovery. Season 3, more I talk about it, the more I hate it.
Pretty mixed season overall.
But that's all of them. They're all like super mixed seasons. None of them are a win. None of them are just, oh, that was good. Season 1, I think...
I remember like the first 3 episodes we were like, oh, this is going to be the best season. This is it. They finally found it.
Arguably, still may be the best season overall, because season 1 had all of that Klingon bullshit. So season 1, I think, is by far still the worst season. I don't even...
not even a question.
Right? Although, admittedly, now I'm thinking about it, season 2 at least did have Pike and did have some stuff that I liked along the way.
Season 2 had the worst overarching plot, but it had a lot of really good individual episodes that I liked.
Alright, that's us. Thank you very much for joining us. We will be back for season 4 when it hits. We'll be here for Section 31. We'll be here for Strange New Worlds. We'll be here for Picard season 2. That'll not be Connor, but still, we'll be here for whatever else they're doing. The
Academy.
The Academy, if that ever happens. But I have to say, my outlook on modern Trek shows right now is pretty dire. It's more of a, well, of course I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to pick apart why it's not Star Trek or why it's not working, even on its own terms. But I found this extremely frustrating. And it's not even take away that the idea of the diplomacy and like her making that choice would be very Star Trek. Take that out of it. Even if this wasn't a Star Trek show, her making that choice is just more interesting than, oh, she's just an evil villain for the last episode. It would just be more interesting even if this was a standalone thing that wasn't called Star Trek. So, anyway. You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month if you want to keep all the content coming. You can, of course, subscribe, all that stuff. It helps us out a lot on YouTube if you do so. So please do. Catch us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. But otherwise, that's us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?